It's time now for Call of the Wild, the official weekly coaches show of the Wenatchee Wild. Stay up to date with your team all season long with Call of the Wild. With head coach and GM Bliss Littler, here's the voice of your Wenatchee Wild, Arch Ecker.
This special edition of Call of the Wild, the playoff version, continues here on the Wenatchee Wild Hockey Network. And joining us from British Columbia, thanks to Arch Ecker, the voice of the Wild, who normally has a chance to sit down with Bliss Littler on these Call of the Wild programs and talk about the intricacies of the games past as well as the games coming up. But, you know, with the playoffs and being on the road and long bus trips, we'll have Bliss for you next week. We've got Arch this week, and I've got some questions that maybe a lot of people don't even think of for Arch. We'll get to that in a sec. Arch, first of all, thanks for joining us from BC. We've got the game from Sunday coming up here on the NCW Life Channel next after our Call of the Wild conversation. I wanted to go back to the regular season, though. I don't know if it was a record for the BCHL, but definitely a record for the Wenatchee Wild. That number of wins in one regular season, it was just amazing.
Yeah, it wasn't quite a record for the BCHL. They've had some pretty amazing teams over the years. Of course, that league's been in existence for decades. But for the Wenatchee Wild, playing in our 9th season this year, the record of 45-9-4 is the best that the Wild have ever put together. So in that regard, as a team, we've accomplished something that's never been done. And individually, we broke so many records this year, the list would be as long as your arm.
Well, let's talk about how that came to be. I mean, probably, would you say the biggest reason is because you have these senior players that have been with the team for so long and been under Coach Bliss Littler for a while now?
Well, that's certainly part of it. You know, anytime, any sport, any level, when a new coach comes in and wants to instill their particular culture into the program, it takes a while for it to develop. It's not something that happens overnight, but Bliss has been able to be consistent. He's had the leadership along with his associate head coach and Tom Rudrud, and of course Chris Clark being right there alongside. Between the three of them, they've provided the stability, and then we've had a number of players who have been able to continue their junior career with the Wild and that have been here for 3-4 years. And so all of those things rolled into one really provides a special atmosphere. And the newer players coming in, now they're coming into an established culture that's built on all the positive things that Coach Littler embodies.
You've been around hockey for a long time, Arch, and you know it's great for these Call of the Wild programs. We get a chance to talk the X's and O's with Coach Littler. I want to get your perspective on Coach as far as, you know, you've been around a lot of coaches. I believe this guy's a pretty special breed of cat. Talk about that relationship and how advantageous it is for this Wenatchee team to have a coach like that here.
It's a great blessing. It's worked out for both parties. Because Bliss is ecstatic to be in the Wenatchee Valley, and the Wenatchee program, and especially the ownership with David and Lisa White, are extremely pleased to have Bliss at the helm of their program. You really couldn't ask for a better custodian. You talk about paying your dues along the way, and Bliss has been through some trying times. He's been through some different times. Of course, he started off in the America Frontier League in Billings, Montana back in 1993, and that was really the wild, wild west of junior hockey. It was a rough and tumble, and he managed his way through that, won, I think, 4 or 5 consecutive Bourne Cup championships in that league. And then he went on to stints in Tri-City and Kearney, Nebraska, in the USHL, Topeka, and the USHL, also Omaha for a while. So he's been around. He's worked for some good owners. He's worked for some situations that have been challenging, but he's been through a lot. And he's basically walked the walk. He's seen it all from a coaching standpoint, and he's found himself armed and ready because he's got the experience, and there's really no substitute for that.
For the casual hockey fan, what's the biggest thing that we could point to on ice and say, well, that's because of this coaching staff?
Well, I think the biggest thing you can see on the ice as a result of the coaching staff is the maturity of the players on the ice and the way they react to challenging situations. Now, any fan that's gone to a game pretty much at any time, I think it's pretty much a commonplace to yell at the refs, right? Everybody gets upset with the referees, but when things don't go your way, you'll see how our guys react to it. For the most part, they take it in stride very well. They get behind in a game, they have the confidence to not fall apart, and they just continue and stay the course and stick with the game plan. And, you know, teams will mirror their coaches. And you take a look at, I mean, you see it around the league. You'll see some of the teams that at times on nights when they get out of control, you look at the coach and you can say, well, maybe I see where it's coming from. But having the cool head and stability of Bliss and his staff really helps keep the players on an even keel. And I think that shows on the ice and off the ice as well.
Well, for those who've been watching the NCAA Life channel, of course, we mentioned coming up tonight, we've got the game from Sunday at the Town Toyota Center. A couple of nights ago, we had the first game of the playoffs, Wenatchee winning over Prince George 4-1. Kind of talk about that night, Arch, coming off of the win on Saturday and then gearing up for that 5 o'clock game time on Sunday that we're going to watch next here on the NCAA Life channel.
Well, you know, the first game, and again, it's playoffs and it's a brand new clean slate and everybody's 0-0 and off you go, despite the fact that the Wild had such a great record during the regular season and had swept Prince George in all 7 games they'd played this year. Short playoff series, anything can happen. And I think both teams came out with a little bit of possibly some playoff jitters and maybe a little bit of just feeling each other out. Not uncommon in any sport with a 7-game series. But I think once that kind of softened a little bit as you get the blood flowing and you get going, you know, the Wild kind of found their stride and were able to pull away. Now, that was the way it happened in game 1. But in game 2, which you'll see here shortly, I think the Wild, with all of that in their rearview mirror, came out with a more concerted effort right out of the gate. And they got off to a pretty quick start and rode that momentum throughout the game.
Of course, we're talking to you up in Prince George after the game on Tuesday night, Wild pulling off a 2-1 win. You know, we've seen 2 games so far that have been scoreless first periods. Do you sense any chance of tightening up when you get into that situation where, I mean, it's one goal one way or the other, and that could determine, okay, this series is different now?
Well, certainly. I mean, playoffs will breed that sort of thing, and there's really just no way around it. It's human nature. You know, and Prince George is going to come out in game 4 knowing that, you know, their back's against the wall. I mean, it's win or go home. That's all there is to it. And for the Wild, I mean, I know that they're in a situation that, granted, they've got a 3-game to none lead, but they're going to come out of the gates looking to try to put this thing away. But they also know that if they don't, then you have to stay here for Thursday for an off day and play another game on Friday. I'm sure this team's pretty ready to get home, but you know, the later it gets in a game and you got a 1-goal game, you're right, guys will hold their sticks a little bit more tightly and they're maybe not quite as free flowing. And you know, sometimes all it takes is a weird bounce and anything can happen. So really I guess the challenge for the players, for the leadership and for the coaches is just to kind of keep everybody doing what they've done all season long by and large. And that's just focus on what we do and relax, have fun, play the game, make plays, do what we do and do it better than anyone else. And you do that and the rest of it falls into place.
We're visiting with Arch Ecker, voice of the Wild, here on the Call of the Wild before tonight's rebroadcast of Sunday's game, game 2 of the first round of the BCHL playoffs for the Wenatchee Wild and the Prince George Spruce Kings. We're going to take a quick commercial break, come back and talk to Arch about the trip to BC, as well as if we need to come back home this weekend. We're going to do that right after this. You're watching Call of the Wild on the Wenatchee Wild Hockey Network.